countries, most particularly those who are in the more vulnerable situation, like women, children and unaccompanied minors. And I think it is fair to say that we should recognize the enormous generosity of a country like Colombia, which is the first country of entry after the people depart from Venezuela, that has just recognized the citizenship to 24,000 babies of Venezuelan families that were born in Colombia. This shows the willingness of the countries of the region to receive, welcome and support those who have been displaced due to the existing situation in Venezuela. The second strong message, I think, is it's very encouraging to see that the governments in the region who are under strong pressure from this massive flow of people are willing to engage and cooperate in integrating those migrants in their societies. Unlikely we see in some other places in the world, there is a recognition of the positive impact that these Venezuelans that are on the move can have to the host communities, to the receiving countries, and it's also a political and moral obligation of the international community to support them in guaranteeing the success of the integration of those who want to stay in the countries of reception in the region, mainly in those sectors that are more sensitive to massive inflows like the health sector and the education sector. And therefore we think that in spite of not being a pledge conference, the fact that there were countries that have engaged in reinforcing our joint platform of support to the Venezuelan migrants, it's a very good sign. It's the beginning of a process, but we think that it is very encouraging, and we want to thank the European Union for having being the host of this very important meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me just add that the joint communiqué by the co-chairs has already been put online, so you can also read that. We'll now take a few questions as our time is limited. Please be short and to the point, so to the topic of the conference, and start by introducing yourself. I'll start with Tony over there.
Hola, bueno, creo que puedo hablar en español. Tony Cerda, Agence France Presse. Al término de la conferencia, el señor Mogherini habló del cansancio de los donantes, visto un poco todas las crisis a nivel mundial que existen. En el caso de los migrantes venezolanos, hasta el momento solo se había conseguido la mitad de los fondos que la ONU consideraba necesarios para afrontar la crisis, y ayer Eduardo Stein dobló estas necesidades para 2020. Mi pregunta es, ¿cómo consideran sostenible en el tiempo la ayuda internacional o el apoyo internacional a estos países, visto sobre todo que la situación política dentro del país en Venezuela no tiene visos de mejorar ni de cambiar en los próximos años? Muchas gracias.
Well, first of all, it is clear for sure for the European Union, but not only for us, that the real solution will come in the moment when Venezuela will find democracy and peace. And we will continue to work in that direction for sure. And the focus we are putting in these days on the need to mobilize humanitarian assistance and pledges does not substitute at all. On the contrary, complements with a sense of urgency our work to find a political solution to solve the Venezuelan political crisis. Having said that, I think the European Union experience is such that we should understand by now, and we can share this with others in the world, that investing in sustaining the needs for humanitarian crisis, and in particular refugee crisis and migrant crisis, is the best investment we can do, also from an economic point of view. Obviously, it's a moral duty, because it's people suffering. It's children, it's women, it's men that have changed completely and not voluntarily their life. But it's not only a moral duty, it's also an investment in economic terms. Because if we do not mobilize resources today, to face the humanitarian needs of Venezuelans that are moving, we might face even more costly consequences from both a humanitarian and an economic point of view in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, because the destabilizing effect that these waves could have in a continent, it's not only a region, it's a continent, might be politically and security-wise massive. We have all praised the open arms and open borders policies of the Latin American countries. We've mobilized resources and we have asked others to mobilize resources to support concretely these efforts. But we know very well that if the resources are not mobilized today, the social, economic, political situation in each of the host communities, each of the host countries, might suffer enormously in terms of stability. And so I believe there's no donor fatigue that is rational enough to prevent us from mobilizing the resources that are needed. It's the best investment we can do. We Europeans know very well if we had invested a little bit to support the Syrian refugee crisis or other migrant crises early in the process, we would have not only saved lives but also saved money. So I think we know by experience that we have to overcome any donor's fatigue, not only for the sake of the people that are involved, but also for the sake of stability, peace and security in an entire continent. And Latin America is a continent that is important for Europe. It's far away geographically, but it's so close socially, culturally. We have family ties, we have economic ties. Some of us speak the same languages and understand the same languages. It is a continent that is close to us. So I believe there is an interest, not only a duty, an interest for the global community to mobilize this funding. And I'm hopeful that this conference of these 2 days will help put start an engine of international solidarity that can also allow the biggest donors, like the European Union, not to be alone in making this effort. And I was pleased today, I finish with that, I was pleased today, like in Far East Asia, where but also announced some additional support. Andy?
I just wanted to add, Federica, if you allow me, just to say first that, I have been in this situation to talk to the media after this type of conferences many times. The issue of donor fatigue always comes up. I hope that we can start talking, because donor fatigue means we need to try and look desperately for some more money. Maybe we should start talking about crisis fatigue so that we all are stimulated to look for solutions, because that will also eliminate the need for extra money. But anyway, this is just a philosophical consideration, not very useful. I wanted to say more practically that an additional element that was discussed, and we've discussed it in the context of this response, is that precisely because of the reflection that Federica made about the late response to the Syria refugee crisis, new instruments have been developed, including by the World Bank, for example, and other financial institutions. Instruments of concessional loans, for example, to countries affected by large numbers of refugees, middle-income countries, as is the case in the Venezuelan situation. So we're now studying ways on how to apply these resources, because I think that these resources, which also are needed, so also need to be contributed, nevertheless are more sustainable in the long run. And in a situation like this, where in particular the impact is also on services, on infrastructure, on the economy, this type of more sustainable assistance is necessary. And I'm happy that this conference will also serve as a catalyst for more work in this direction.
I'm afraid I'll be able to take one more question, since we are running really late over there, and then unfortunately we'll have to conclude. Please go ahead.
Ana Lázaro, de Euronews. Me gustaría profundizar en algo que ha comentado. Querría saber hasta qué punto están preocupados por la posibilidad de que esta crisis desestabilice los países vecinos que están acogiendo a los migrantes, sobre todo porque hay mucha presión sobre los recursos sociales, hospitales, escuela, educación. Y también querría saber si les preocupa el hecho de que algunos países estén empezando a poner problemas en las fronteras, a exigir más requisitos a los migrantes, y si creen que podrían llegar a cerrarse estas fronteras. ¿Cuánto les preocupa esto?
I can start and then let Filippo and Antonio complement. I think that, in particular as Europeans, we really need to pay respect and commend for not only the institutions, but also the societies and the local communities of the countries in Latin America, not only the neighboring ones. As Filippo mentioned, some of the ministers present in the room from Latin America reminded us that they are maybe 4,000, 8,000 kilometers away from Caracas. They have been reacting so far, society, institutions, local communities, services, social services of these countries, in a remarkable manner. This should not be given for granted, and this is why we share a sense of urgency in the need to support them before this implies social tensions, major economic or social problems in the hosting countries. Because we know by experience, it has been difficult for Europeans. Imagine for Latin Americans that have themselves their own issue to deal with. So this is why I think it is extremely wise and it's extremely urgent to mobilize international support for these countries and for the Venezuelans that are moving in these countries before this becomes a destabilizing factor. It is not yet the case. Obviously, the worry is there, but this worry should not just make us worry. This worry should make us act and mobilize these resources that are, I repeat it once again, the smartest investment in peace, security and stability we can make in the region. €1 to support this effort today is worth €100 tomorrow. The timing, but here you have more experience than me, but the timing of the mobilization of the global financial support to humanitarian crisis is not an irrelevant factor. The earlier we mobilize funds, the better it is for preventing dynamics from happening, especially in the neighboring countries, and obviously on the lives of Venezuelans, which is what concerns us the most.
Well, just very briefly to say that we understand that the governments in the region are under strong pressure and they need to enter into a dialogue with their own societies to guarantee that the refugees and the migrants are welcomed and there is no increase in the tensions between the host communities and the new arrivals. Having said that, of course, we understand some of the measures that have been taken by the governments in the region concerning the border controls, but at the same time we encourage them to register and give documents to all migrants that are on the move, because that is a key prerequisite to guarantee that the governments are able to manage the migratory flows. Those people are not left in a limbo, they are not ignored, they have an identity, a dignity and a recognition of their documentation. And that is a fundamental instrument to make sure that they can move around, and we encourage the Quito process to issue a regional identification card for all refugees and migrants that are coming from Venezuela, so that we can fight more effectively against traffickers and smugglers. Because when those restrictive measures are adopted, it's a market opportunity for traffickers and smugglers. And we are cooperating with the governments of the region in that sense. I apologize, but I did not persuade my plane to wait for me. So have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes the press conference, but we do have experts in the room in case you have any questions that they can help you with. Thank you very much. And midday starts in 1 to 2 minutes, I think.